If you trace the actual geographic steps of Jesus Christ, his movements reveal a highly calculated military invasion. To understand the strategy, you have to understand the map. In the 1st century, the Earth was considered occupied territory. Centuries earlier, at the Tower of Babel, a cosmic divorce took place, and the nations of the world were handed over to rogue spiritual powers. The headquarters for those rogue powers was right here, Mount Hermon. According to the Jewish traditions of the time, this massive peak was the exact landing zone for the heavenly rebellion described in Genesis 6. God the Father had already held a cosmic courtroom session to deal with this treason. In Psalm 82, he passed a guilty verdict against these occupying powers, stripping them of their immortality. But a courtroom verdict requires an executor to enforce it. These rogue powers held humanity through a strict legal claim of debt. As long as human sin existed, they had leverage. They were never going to surrender their ground voluntarily. To rescue humanity, someone had to physically cross enemy lines. God appointed his Son to step directly onto the rebellion's own turf and break their grip from the inside. This brings us to Matthew 16. Jesus pulls his disciples away from the safety of Jerusalem and marches them directly north into hostile pagan territory, stopping at the base of Mount Hermon. They arrived at Caesarea Philippi. The ruins you see here sit on foundations where centuries of deep idolatry, ritual prostitution, and child sacrifice took place. Behind Jesus stood a massive cave carved into the rock cliff. The pagans who worshipped here named it the Gates of Hades. Standing here, Jesus says the gates of Hades will not overcome his church. Gates are a defensive structure. Cities built them to keep attacking armies out. Jesus was standing at the entrance of the rebellion's headquarters and announcing a full-scale offensive strike. 6 days later, Jesus takes 3 of his disciples up the high mountain right above them. That peak is Mount Hermon. He takes them to the exact spot where the ancient rebellion touched down. While they are standing on the enemy's mountain, the sky breaks open. God the Father speaks from a cloud, planting his flag and declaring to the spirit realm that Jesus is his true appointed Son. Jesus hiking up this mountain was a highly public, geographic declaration of war. He stood on the rebellion's front porch and told the occupying powers he was taking the territory back. The campaign moved south to Jerusalem. To those watching the execution, the campaign appeared to have collapsed, a total victory for the rogue powers. But Paul's letter to the Colossians reveals the legal reality happening in the spirit realm. The rogue powers maintained their jurisdiction over the nations because they held a valid indictment. Human sin gave them leverage in the cosmic courtroom. By absorbing that human sin debt into his own body, Jesus dissolved the contract. He took the legal paperwork that gave the occupying powers their authority and burned it. With the debt settled, the powers lost their claim. Paul uses military language to describe what happened. Jesus stripped the enemy generals of their weapons and paraded them through the spirit realm in total defeat. 3 days later, the tomb opened. The resurrection serves as God the Father's supreme court verdict. It publicly underwrote every claim Jesus made and broadcast to the occupying powers that their reign was finished. This physical execution functioned as a courtroom enforcement. It stripped the rogue powers of their jurisdiction and permanently severed their legal claim over humanity. Fast forward 50 days to Pentecost. The disciples are gathered in the Old City, and the Father's Spirit falls on them. They begin speaking to a massive crowd of foreign pilgrims. The book of Acts lists the homes of these pilgrims: Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Rome. These are the exact regions scattered centuries earlier during the divorce at Babel. At Babel, the Father confused human language to scatter the nations. By speaking to these same groups now in their own native tongues, he was systematically reversing that judgment. The announcement to the spirit realm was clear: the cosmic divorce is over. Before Jesus leaves Earth, he stands in front of his disciples and issues a final, massive claim. All authority in heaven and on earth has now been legally transferred to him. He tells them to go and make disciples of all nations. This is a literal deployment order. It is a mandate to carry the Father's adoption papers directly across enemy lines. Every time you share the gospel with a neighbor or live faithfully in your household, you are participating in the infantry movement of a cosmic rescue mission. You are claiming the earth back from the rogue powers, one square foot at a time.